Hi, I'm Ralph Albert Thomas, CEO and Executive Director of the New Jersey Society of CPAs. And at this Issues Watch Extra, we have two guests. We have Steve McCarthy, who is an accounting lecturer at Kean University here in Union, New Jersey, right, Steve?
Yes, correct.
And to my left, we have the venerable Jim Hardenberg, our Chief Learning Officer here at the Society. Today, we're going to be talking about the whole aspect of learning. We're in a new triennial reporting period for our members here in New Jersey that began January 1, 2015 and runs through the end of 2017, in other words, December 31st, 2017. And we're anticipating some new changes that are going to be taking place with respect to CPE and how it's delivered, the content and the types of models. And so we're very fortunate to have these two gentlemen here today to share their insights about what they're doing. Steve in the classroom, Jim with our members, and I think in tandem you'll talk about how the landscape is changing with regard to CPE. You know, new technologies are expected to make an impact on the way CPE is delivered in the near future. Steve, you wrote an article recently for the Society, and it appeared in our magazine in our January-February issue of NJCPA, and it was entitled "The Future of CPE Delivery." Well, and you discussed the various types of CPE opportunities that we might soon see. So why don't we start with you, and maybe you could run us through some of the things you talked about in your article and what we, will be looking for.
Well, Ralph, thank you. When we talk about the future, some things are here today, and we'll see. And for people of New Jersey, in the high schools and elementary schools right now, we have the PARCC test, which has created a lot of discussion. And so that is a self-assessment test to test students on the core knowledge in the subjects that they have. And people are sort of nervous today about going forward with those PARCC tests. But I believe that's going to be part of the future, just like the changes in CPE will continue to be part of the future for us.
And in fact, assessment has become one of the big question marks about some of the new delivery methods and models out there. How will you be able to assess what, let's say, Jim will take away from a particular learning module? So why don't you delve into that?
That's, again, correct, Ralph, that assessment will be the big challenge going forward. So in the past, you might have gone into a classroom to take CPE along with 50 other people, and you're sitting in the back row reading the newspaper, and at the end of the meeting, you go home, but you got your CPE credit. In the future, there will be assessment to find out if you know something, if you've learned something during that CPE session. And so the new tools that are coming out are assessing the knowledge that you gained from a CPE session.
So if we're still going to have the live, face-to-face, are you saying that at the end we're going to have maybe a test that's similar to what people do with self-study now, or?
Quite possibly. That's how it will be done, and so just using devices, so people could have a smartphone in the classroom, right? And the professor is lecturing and asking people to answer a question midway through, at least to show that you're paying attention going through. If you're on webinars now, there's a requirement on a webinar, in a 1 hour webinar, I think you have to have 4 points that you have to show that you're still awake and log in and answer a question. And so we'll see more of that going forward.
One of the new nomenclatures or things we've heard about is this thing called nanobytes or bytes of learning, where in 10-minute increments you'll get something that I won't say, hopefully makes you a little more knowledgeable. So how do you assess what somebody's learned in 10 minutes with a nanobyte?
I'd start by saying, first of all, I'm a big proponent in nanobytes. And so it's just 10 minutes of information being provided to you. So it could be auditors are out in the field and there's a change in a tax law that just came out today. And so you could send something out to them, a YouTube video that's a 10-minute video, and talking about a change in the tax law. And right there, you could have them respond, write 40 words or 50 words back about, do you understand what you just learned? And boom, they're assessed. They see a 10-minute video and they're assessed. And I think the millennials will be the one that will embrace that and use it rather than going to a classroom and taking a 4 hour seminar. But they're in most states now, they don't allow nanobites. They don't allow 10-minute segments.
Yet.
Yeah.
And so that will have to change.
Yeah. I think we have, what, two states, Jim, that have moved or gravitated?
Maryland and Ohio.
Maryland and Ohio.
But I think going forward, we live in the YouTube generation
Yeah,
where
we
people
do.
are watching 2, 3, 4-minute videos and learning something. So I think that's a big part of the future.
What will we think of next? There's also this concept of real-world learning. Now, that's something that's really been, I think, I would say maybe a little controversial, that I could learn something by just having a conversation with Jim here. I mean, Jim's a very smart guy, by the way, as our Chief Learning Officer, but and really then how would the assessment work in that regard, where Jim and I are sitting down talking about a particular issue? It may be a new pronouncement that came out and whatnot. How do you know? And I also want to think about it in terms of not just how the traditional, educator may assess it, but then how do regulators get comfortable with, like our State Board of Accountancy, that this conversation that Jim and I had, that I really came away with something like that?
I think I'm also a proponent of this also, Ralph. But I think initially it will be more of a formalized process than the casual process that you mentioned of you and Jim just having a discussion. As you can imagine, and again, an auditor out in the field has a tax issue. So he will be able to log on to a tax research, do research on a tax issue, and respond. So it's real world learning. And then he answers the question that he needs on the audit. So there will be maybe a digital badge that he has that he's going to log on to something. So I don't think it will start out being a casual conversation. I think it will be going to a site to find the information you need and then incorporating that right into the audit as you're sitting there. And it will monitor the time that you spend on there. It will have some type of assessment at the end. Did you understand what you just read? And then you'll get credit for that.
Interesting. Boy, Jim, let me segue a little bit to you on this, because as our Chief Learning Officer and running a program, that the education foundation that we have here at the Society, how would we address real world learning? I mean, if we had like roundtables where we brought people in to talk to each other on a particular issue, do you see this real world learning concept, even though Steve embraces it and thinks it's a good thing, do you see that as something that our state board could get its arms around, or that we could be gravitating to here in the Society?
I think a lot is yet to be determined from a standard standpoint, a regulatory standpoint. The challenge, I think, from the regulation side is everything can't qualify for CBE. Everything can't qualify for credit. Yet, there is a way to expand what does qualify that makes a lot of real world sense. So for us in particular, I could see us having structured committee meetings where you have a real world forum where professionals gather. There will be topics that obviously are technical in nature, that some of the best CPE happens in those informal environments where professionals talk to each other about commonalities that are happening in the workplace.
And it's certainly something that our members have traditionally liked, with some of the program that we run, that ability to come together, network, talk about, bring up issues that they have encountered, that there's nothing perhaps in black and white about it, but because somebody else may have experienced something similar, they can provide them what happened in their situation there. So this is just going to be an interesting. There's also this concept of blended learning, which is and let me swing back to you, Steve. In the college and university environment, are you using blended learning?
Yes, we are. As a matter of fact, in the article that I wrote, I interviewed a director of learning from McGraw-Hill. And so they're developing this now. So their concept is, their product is called Learn Smart, but the student does Learn Smart before coming into class. It might be a 1-hour video that they're watching with some assessment questions they have to do before coming to class. And then when they come to class, they have some base knowledge of what it is that you're going to participate in. So first of all, for the instructor, it raises the level a little bit, that the people are a little bit more educated about the subject matter, and then you can still assess them afterwards. And I could see you having your classroom instruction here, but before the people come, they have to watch a video, a 1-hour video maybe, so they get an hour of credit for that. And they come into the class, the instructor could have assessment questions that, using some device, they could be answering questions and you could be gauging their learning.
So again, on the blending learning, you'd watch a video, you'd get credit for that element. Now, how would that be assessed? Would you have to answer questions or something at that point? So they would have to,
at the end of the video, yes, they
would. Or at the end of when you come together in the live facilitated session, would it all be combined together, or will you get a portion for the video and a portion for the facilitated?
So in McGraw-Hill's technology, you do an assessment on the video first, and then you do another assessment. So there's two different assessments.
I tell you. And Steve mentioned that he wrote an article for us. It's in I'll take the liberty to say it's in our NJCPA magazine. It's the January-February 2015 issue. So for those of you who perhaps maybe haven't read it, I challenge you to go back and read it. And if you have read it, go back and read it again, because it's got some really good comments and thoughts in here about the future of CPE delivery.